up, Internet, and welcome back to On the Sofa Live. If you're new, do subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay in the loop. Okay, yes, welcome to On the Sofa Live, edition 20. This is the 20th one. And before I start, I've got an announcement to make. This is going to be my last stream for about 4 weeks. And the reason for that is because I feel that I've been spreading myself a bit too thin lately. And I'm feeling quite run down, to be honest. So I'm going to take 4 weeks off. But don't worry, I'm going to leave you with plenty of content. There'll still be a video that scheduled for every day until I get back. And so it will go. the time will just fly by. I'll be live streaming again in no time. So that said, let's get straight into the first item, the first segment. We've got some breaking news here. This is from CNN by Claire Foran. McConnell says he's been discharged from rehab center and will continue recovery at home. And there's a photo of him there. Senator Mitch McConnell is seen during a budget hearing at the Dirksen Senate office building on May the 19th. Excuse me. Senator Mitch McConnell said on Thursday that he has been discharged from the rehabilitation center where he had been recovering after a fall and will continue to recover at home. Earlier today, I was discharged from the rehabilitation center to continue my recovery at home. Elaine and I are grateful for the many well wishes and support from friends, colleagues, and Kentuckians, and for the attentive care I received from excellent doctors, nurses, therapists, and hospital staff, the Kentucky Republicans said in a statement. On the advice of my doctors, I'll maintain an intensive regime of physical therapy from home during the state work period, and I'll continue to engage with my staff and colleagues on important Senate business, he added. The former Senate Majority Leader, who is 84 and not running for re-election, was admitted to the hospital on June the 14th, but his office did not disclose the reason for the hospitalization at the time. In July, after weeks of speculation over his health status, McConnell announced that a fall had landed him in the hospital. My doctors have confirmed that I didn't break any bones or suffer a concussion. I didn't have a heart attack or a stroke. I don't have any tumors or hemorrhages, but I was briefly unconscious and was taken to the hospital. While receiving excellent care over the past several weeks, I've also had to deal with a mild case of pneumonia, he said in a statement at the time. The senator went on to say that he had been moved to a rehabilitation center to continue regaining his strength. And I'm just trying to find something else about this as well. Yeah. Okay. The problem is, people don't believe this statement, as we shall see. Let's take a look at this post on Threads. This is also from CNN. Senator Mitch McConnell said that he has been discharged from the rehabilitation center where he had been recovering after a fall and will continue to recover at home. Let's look at some of the comments. Chimps V-Dog said, home is a weird name for the morgue. The Aberfroman said, did anyone witness him saying it, or is CNN just repeating a released statement? Yonder Thebadu said, was that a telepathic message you received from another dimension? To which Sharon McGuickenbike replied, from hell. Yozoda said, so he snuck into his home. Yes, interesting. Diabolical Ironclad Butterfly posted, so he'll die in his sleep around next Senate deadline, huh? Yeah, probably. George BJR67 said, did we see him say that? Or was it just a communication from his lying staff? Mountain Cabin Fever said, reading a statement isn't news reporting, it's propaganda. Vinny Nice Now said, is this a picture of him leaving the hospital? CNN is 100% state TV. Ruthunian99 said, this is a lie. He said means someone spoke words aloud. Did your reporters hear McConnell? If not, CNN, you are lying. Bobomatic 808 said, video or it didn't happen. Bad Toad 20 said, discharged into the afterworld, to which Tom Hundlerin replied, a celestial discharge, transferred to the Eternal Care Unit, discharged via basement/morgue, discharged via top floor of hospital plus 1 floor, DC to JC. And Jeff S. White said, he did not say. His assistants released a statement, not the same thing at all. And a lot of people seem to be picking up on the fact that Mitch McConnell hasn't actually said anything in person, that this is just a released statement, probably from one of his members of staff. This doesn't prove anything. It's not really proof of life. It doesn't really change anything. People still don't believe that he's alive. We haven't seen any video evidence that he's left the hospital or that he's alive and well. So people are still skeptical. They just don't believe that he's still with us in the land of the living. So this story is just going to go on and on until we get evidence one way or the other. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, moving on to the next segment. Let's consult my list. Okay, yes. Right. Let's do this. This story is from The Times. Nigel Farage struck reform comeback deal long before election. Supervised by the convicted fraudster George Cottrell, the agreement undermines Farage's claim about when he decided to return to politics. Nigel Farage struck a secret deal to return as leader of Reform UK months before the general election. Farage negotiated the pact with Richard Tice, then the leader, in March and April 2024. George Cottrell, the convicted fraudster, who had been secretly bankrolling Farage, supervised the discussions. Excuse me. Under the terms of the deal, once Farage became leader, Reform would repay or write off more than £1 million in outstanding loans it had received from Tice's company. The deal was first presented by Farage and Cottrell to the party's treasurer in mid-May. Its existence undermines the Reform leader's claim that he had no intention until June 2024 of returning to politics. Farage has used this to defend his failure to declare donations made to him in the year before he was elected as an MP, which triggered 2 parliamentary investigations. So, yeah, the plot thickens. It seems that Farage has been lying about the timeline of him returning to politics and receiving, these donations. This story just gets worse and worse for Farage, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. The article continues. On Saturday, Reform sources acknowledged the existence of the deal, but insisted it had been drafted for it, not when Farage became leader. Asked why he would have signed such an agreement if he had no intention of returning as leader, they said it kept his options open. They said Farage had assumed he would focus on his energies on campaigning for Donald Trump in that year's US presidential election. Claim used as defense after £5 million gift. Farage has claimed repeatedly that he did not need to declare a £5 million gift from the crypto billionaire Christopher Harborne or in-kind benefits from Cottrell, as he was a media personality at the time. MPs must declare any benefit in any way connected to their political activities received in the 12 months before their election. Yeah, right. He was just a media personality at the time and had no interest in politics whatsoever. Yeah, pull the other one, Farage. This one has got bells on. And even if we believe you, even if we believe that statement that you were just a media personality at the time, as the moment that you decided otherwise, that you decided to run as a MP, that should have been the moment that you declared any donations. But you didn't, did you? He, that is Farage, told the Trigonometry podcast last month, at that period of my life, from 2021 to the 3rd of June 2024, I was a broadcaster. I was someone that appeared on celebrity TV programs. I was somebody that promoted some financial market products, but I was an influencer. I wasn't in politics. Yeah, sure. Mirtash Azami, the party treasurer at the time, said, I was told about the agreement before the election was called. It commenced when Nigel came back. The essence was the schedule of repayments. I was told to implement it and acted to fulfill it in line with my responsibilities. The disclosures also raised more questions about Reform UK's compliance with electoral law. The party is already at the centre of a Metropolitan Police investigation into whether the source of its donations were disguised. And yeah, that's the thing. The police have got involved in this as well. So he can delay and deflect all he wants, but the law and arm of the law is going to catch up with him eventually. It's only delaying the inevitable by forcing this by-election. It's stupid. It's going to blow up in his face because all the truth is coming out now, and the police are investigating. The Sunday Times Insight team can reveal that on the date of the first repayment in June 2024, Reform sent £200,000 to a personal account belonging to Tice and not to his company that had lent the money. Officials identified the payment, but the Electoral Commission was not told, and filings say incorrectly that the company was paid, a potential criminal offence. Yeah, that sounds dodgy as fuck. And there's a photo of Farage and Tice campaigning for the Brexit Party in 2019 before its rebranding as Reform UK. Excuse me. How the deal came about. On May the 22nd, 2024, Rishi Sunak announced a snap election would be held on July the 4th. By then, unknown to almost anyone, Farage had secretly been plotting a potential path to the leadership and, in turn, the House of Commons for some months. In March and April that year, he and Tice had entered into an agreement on the future of the party. In mid-May, Farage discussed its details with two confidants in an office space on the fourth floor of a townhouse near Buckingham Palace, Cottrell and Azami. Azami, whom Cottrell first met as a teenager, had been the party's treasurer since 2019, but he spent much of his time in Dubai and had become disengaged. Cottrell had asked him to return to the UK and to his day-to-day duties on the basis that Farage was making a comeback. And there's Rishi Sunak on that fateful rainy day outside number 10, announcing the snap election. Farage explained that Azami would be in charge of both repaying and writing off the more than £1 million that Tice had lent the party via his company since 2020. The property developer's money had been crucial in keeping the lights on at Reform's headquarters in Ashby Dillard Zelch, Leicestershire. Farage presented a piece of paper that set out how he would return Tice's money. Previously, according to financial documents, the loans were interest-free, repayable upon request, and only if the party cash position allows. This was now to change. Farage outlined a schedule of repayments. Over the next year, Tice's company would receive six-figure installments or convert previous loans into donations, bringing its £1,083,000 debts back down to zero. As treasurer, Azami would be responsible for handling the transactions. Such details were withheld from almost all party officials. Ben Habib, then Tice's deputy leader, had said he had no idea financial deals were being struck at the top of the party, suggesting that his trust had been abused. When Sunak announced the snap election would be held on July the 4th, Farage admitted he had been wrong-footed. He said he would not stand and would instead spend his time doing my bit to rally support for Tice. In the days that followed, however, Farage received entreaties from across the right to think again, and on June the 3rd, he announced that he had returned as leader and would stand as MP for Clacton in Essex. Tice was demoted to deputy. In my opinion, all of this is dodgy. It's dodgy as fuck. And it needs to be thoroughly investigated. And I've got a feeling we've just seen the tip of the iceberg here. We've just seen the tip of the iceberg. More and more revelations are going to come out about this, I'm sure of it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Okay, moving on. Moving on to the next segment. Do we have any comments? No, not yet. Okay, moving on. Okay, more Farage. Oh, this story is from the Daily Britain by Joe Connor. Nigel Farage begs reform activists to help me for once as Clacton vote looms. He made the appeal in an impromptu Facebook live chat with Matt Goodwin, Reform's failed Gorton and Denton candidate from earlier this year, filmed standing in a field. Goodwin asked him to give a message to canvassers. Farage's answer? I know Clacton is hard to get to, but for once, I'm asking you to come and help me. We need more people here to build an impressive level of data on the day, we'll need an army of people to turn out the vote. I never ask you for anything, but this time I am. Come to Clacton and help out. The problem with the pitch. Come and help him for once implies his supporters owe him something. It's an odd frame for a by-election he called himself, against a man in a bin costume at the exact moment his own personal finances are under more scrutiny than at any point in his career. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit much to ask people for help at this stage when he forced this by-election himself. And he's up against a man dressed in a bin, for goodness sake. What do you mean he needs help? He can't be scared of a man dressed in a bin costume, surely. It's pathetic. It's pathetic that Nigel Farage and Reform are trying to paint Count Binface as the establishment. They obviously see him as a threat, but he's a joke, satirical candidate. But for Nigel to be begging for help like this, he's obviously scared that Count Binface might actually pull it off, that he may actually win. Pathetic stuff. The article continues. The article continues. Conservative councillor Lucy Trimnall put it plainly. He just wants data to help him in the real by-election, which is a very likely possibility following the findings from the investigation into his finances. Nothing at the top of Reform stems from what's best for communities and people. They're just data. It's all about what's best for Nigel. The data line matters here. Farage specifically asked for help building an impressive level of data, which reads less like grassroots enthusiasm and more like a canvassing operation collecting numbers for whatever comes next, quite possibly a second by-election. If the parliamentary standards process against him goes the way it currently looks, it might. Why he might actually need the army he's asking for. Farage's own polling has collapsed to a post-election low, with pollsters flagging that the real warning sign for Reform isn't rising disapproval, it's previous supporters actively drifting away. Labour has now overtaken Reform nationally for the first time in over a year, a genuine reversal from the double-digit leads Reform was posting for most of the past 16 months. Excuse Excuse me. Locally, Count Binface has been running an increasingly serious campaign against him, publishing a full manifesto that pointedly promises weekly constituency surgeries and limits on time spent overseas, direct digs at exactly the criticisms that have followed Farage's own record as Clacton's MP. Binface's campaign has now gone properly international too, with ABC News Australia sending a reporter to interview him directly, following similar coverage from MSNBC in the US. A by-election in one English seaside constituency has become a story broadcasters on 3 continents keep finding newsworthy, mostly because of how visibly it keeps embarrassing the man who triggered it. Even Farage's attempt to mark the 155th anniversary of Clacton Pier backfired after he was mocked for appearing to have digitally edited himself into a photo of the landmark rather than actually visiting it, only for Binface to respond with an even more transparently photoshopped parody of his own, captioned Photoshop or Canva. Yeah, I saw that. That was a genius move by Count Binface. Absolutely first class. And the Reverend Anton Mittens posted some footage of Nigel Farage's plea for help. He said this: Farage abandoned his Greater Manchester mayoral election candidate to fight alone and has the gall to say to his councillors and followers, for once, I'm asking you to come and help me in Clacton. He has no shame. Let's play this clip.
I know Clacton's hard to get to. I know it's summer holes time. But for once, I'm asking you to come and help me. We need a lot more people here in the next fortnight to build up a massive, impressive level of data. And on the day, we're going to need an army of people to turn out the vote, particularly if it's a hot one like this. So I never ask you for anything, but this time I am. Please come to Clacton, lend a hand.
Pathetic stuff. That reeks of desperation. And the Receipts UK replied, shit scared of a man with a bin on his head. Yeah, exactly. The finances behind the timing. The context Trimnall referenced isn't speculation. A new Sunday Times investigation revealed Farage struck a secret deal to return as Reform's leader months before he always claimed he considered it. An agreement supervised by George Cottrell that directly undermines Farage's own defence for not declaring gifts received before he became an MP. Cottrell separately transferred more than $2 million to his mother in the days before her donations to Reform, a pattern now central to an ongoing Metropolitan Police investigation. Asked about it directly at a press conference this week, Robert Jenrick repeatedly declined to answer, instead calling the parliamentary standards process a kangaroo court. That's the backdrop against which Farage is now asking activists, who've apparently never had to be asked before, to turn up to Clacton in numbers. I can't believe that Nigel Farage is running scared of a man dressed as a bin. It all reeks of desperation on his part. But let me know your thoughts about all this in the comments. Okay, moving on. We've still got quite a lot to get through. Let's see. Yeah, okay. This is a good one. This story is from The Guardian. MPs have had their stomachs pumped. Concerns over alcohol-soaked culture in Westminster. Alcohol is embedded in profession where long hours, loneliness and lobbying are the norm, report finds. Parliament is Britain's last alcohol-soaked workplace, where MPs are offered free drinks as early as midday, despite alcohol-related scandals a report has revealed. Drinking is commonplace, and some MPs have had their stomachs pumped after consuming so much alcohol that they ended up in hospital, one disclosed. Alcohol is embedded in how Westminster works, driven by loneliness among MPs, socialising in order to meet ministers, and drinks being served at daytime and evening events. So Hannah Spencer must be feeling pretty vindicated round about now. The people laughed at her and mocked her and derided her for what she said about the drinking, about all the drinking culture in Westminster, but she's been proved right. This article vindicates her. This report vindicates her. It proves that she was correct. Those are the findings of a survey of 190 MPs and their staff, which shows that Westminster's drinking culture endures, despite rising concern and a string of incidents, including an MP's researcher allegedly having had her drink spilled in Strangers' Bar in Parliament, and the revelation that the Labour MP Neil Coyle was at one time drinking up to 200 units of alcohol a week, the equivalent of 10 pints a night. The spiking led to a police investigation and temporary closure of Strangers' Bar. Did I say spilled? So let's start that again. Those are the findings of a survey of 190 MPs and their staff, which shows that Westminster's drinking culture endures, despite rising concern and a string of incidents, including an MP's researcher allegedly having had her drink spiked in Strangers' Bar in Parliament, and the revelation that the Labour MP Neil Coyle was at one time drinking up to 200 units of alcohol a week, the equivalent of 10 pints a night. The spiking led to a police investigation and the temporary closure of Strangers' Bar. That is awful. Imagine getting your drink spiked in Westminster, of all places. Bloody hell. That is terrible. I mean, it's terrible when it happens anywhere, but you wouldn't expect it to happen in Westminster, would you? You wouldn't think so anyway. The report by the Institute of Alcohol Studies, IAS, think tank said the findings suggest that Westminster remains a highly unusual workplace where alcohol is embedded in professional life, networking, lobbying, and socializing in ways that would be exceptional in most other UK workplaces. And there's a photo there of Andy Burnham and the Chancellor John Healey enjoying a pint during a trip to Essex. Participants described alcohol as being available throughout the working day, frequently provided for free, and often intertwined with career advancements. 24 MPs, 58 Westminster staff, and 108 constituency office personnel shared their experiences and views. One MP, describing how readily available alcohol was at Westminster, said, "Going to a meeting at noon and alcohol's available. Of course, I'm not used to that in my old job." The free alcohol at events on the parliamentary estate, which organisations arranged to help them lobby MPs, emerged as a particular issue. Another MP said, "Where else in a work environment would you go unless it was the works Christmas do and there was free alcohol there for you? It just wouldn't happen in real life." A third said, "You can start drinking here from 12 o'clock onwards and go around and consume large amounts of alcohol, and it's relatively freely available." A fourth described events as legitimized opportunity to drink alcohol, while a fifth said this routine provision of alcohol helps to create a casual attitude to drinking. Hannah Spencer, the Green Party MP, elected at the Gorton and Denton by-election in February, received a mixed reaction from MPs when in April she was labelled Westminster's drinking culture unprofessional and worrying, and said it led to cases of questionable and dangerous behaviour. She remarked that you can smell the alcohol when people are in between votes. Yeah, and as I said, she's been completely vindicated by this report. The IAS report also found that 42% of the MPs interviewed had been offered an alcoholic drink at a work meeting or event on a weekly basis during the previous 6 months. 13% said that occurred daily. 22% had concerns about a colleague's drinking. Parliament's long and unusual working hours, the loneliness many MPs experience being away from home, the pressures of their job and socialising in order to advance their careers can all act as catalysts for drinking. The report added the availability of alcohol was seen to encourage unhealthy behaviour in general, from affecting colleagues' sleep and stress levels to potentially normalising high-risk drinking, with one MP referring to colleagues having had their stomachs pumped in hospital and going back to Westminster the following day. If that's true, that is shocking. Imagine drinking so much it makes you so sick that you need to be rushed to hospital to get your stomach pumped, and then you return to work the following day. When does that happen in any other job? It's unheard of. Utterly shocking. Some MPs said the findings should prompt Westminster to rethink its attitude to alcohol. The Labour MP Cat Smith said, "We wouldn't accept a surgeon operating after a drink or a driver getting behind the wheel. So why should we accept legislators voting on the laws of the land after one? If we're serious about being a professional workplace, we have to ask hard questions about practices like late-night votes that sit alongside on-tap bars." Becky Cooper, who was a public health consultant before entering Parliament as a Labour MP in 2024, said the report was a wake-up call. In a foreword to the report, she suggested that Parliament should draw up its first formal workplace policy on alcohol. She added, "Two findings stood out to me. Almost 1 in 10 respondents reported a negative experience because of someone else's drinking at work, and 70% either didn't know or weren't sure how to raise a concern about a colleague's drinking. That combination, real measurable harm and no clear route to address it, is exactly the kind of gap we need to address." Catherine Severi, the IAS's chief executive, said Westminster should limit the provision of free alcohol to evening events as part of a renewed drive to make it a more modern workplace, which many MPs and staff support. Very few professions these days would allow free alcohol from midday or regularly host outside organisations sponsoring events where drinking is the norm during working hours, she added. The report also said that the commercialisation of Parliament as an events venue contributed to MPs drinking. In 2023, Parliament's Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme said alcohol was a frequent factor in its investigations into alleged misconduct at Westminster. In its findings of 30 investigations it undertook between 2021 and 2022, it added that drinking in Parliament's array of bars was leading to an intimidating behaviour like shouting and swearing. Bloody hell. Yeah, it would do, wouldn't it? Yeah, alcohol. Yeah, it seems to me, how can I put this? Yeah, it probably would do, wouldn't it? Because, large, drink, and I'll start, that sentence has got away from me. Yeah, it probably would do, wouldn't it? Because drinking vast amounts of alcohol usually does lead to behaviours like shouting and swearing. Let's face it. The article goes on. In July 2023, Daniel Greenberg, the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner, said alcohol had led to behaviour problems at Westminster and suggested the sale of alcohol on the state be kept under review. A Parliament spokesperson said everyone working there had been reminded to use alcohol responsibly, but hinted that immediate changes were unlikely. Any changes to Parliament's provision of alcohol would ultimately be a matter for members to decide on. The estate is a unique working environment that includes public access and events, they said. So in other words, nothing's going to fucking happen. Parliament's behaviour code makes clear that everyone should be treated with respect at all times, and those who choose to drink alcohol on the estate must do so responsibly. Westminster's efforts to promote more responsible drinking include greater provision for no and low alcohol products and the venue staff's right to refuse to serve anyone who is or looks likely to become intoxicated. It seems to me that even though people were mocking Hannah Spencer at the time when she said that she was concerned about the drinking culture at West. Start that again. It seems to me that although people mocked and laughed at Hannah Spencer when she voiced her concerns about the drinking culture at Westminster, it seems that this report has completely vindicated her. You know, she was right to voice her concerns. But let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments. Okay, whew. God, it's warm. It's bloody warm in here. I could have the fan on, but it's bloody, it's noisy. It's too noisy. I don't want it to be, I don't want there to be any noise in the background. That's the thing. There we go. Richard Tice next. Excuse me. This story is from The Canary by Willem Moore. Richard Tice has meltdown over anti-slavery post. Richard Tice is the deputy of Reform UK. And do you know what really winds him up? The idea that people of faith might want to acknowledge and learn from the horrors of the past. We'd like to say this is unexpected, but Tice was promoting an alleged human trafficker a few weeks ago, so it really isn't. This is a tweet from the Archbishop of Canterbury. Today I visited Cape Coast Castle, seeing the horrific conditions that thousands of people were kept in. It's impossible not to feel the weight of the immense evil that drove the transatlantic slave trade. I pray not only in lament for the church's involvement in the slave trade. Oh, it seems to finish mid-sentence for some reason, but let's play this clip. Actually, I'll start the whole thing again. The Archbishop of Canterbury tweeted this. Today I visited Cape Coast Castle, seeing the horrific conditions that thousands of people were kept in. It is impossible not to feel the weight of the immense evil that drove the transatlantic slave trade. I pray not only in lament for the church's involvement in the slave trade, but also for hope that the God of healing can bring justice and reconciliation to all who are still impacted by its legacy. In the name of Jesus Christ, who came to set people free, I pray that we have the courage to continue our journey of repentance and to strive for a world in which all of God's children are treated with dignity. Let's play this clip. Quite moving. And this was Richard Tice's response. Did you thank Jesus for giving great courage and vision to the British for abolishing the slave trade, spending vast amounts of money and sacrificing brave Royal Naval sailors in the process? As a Christian, you don't speak for me, nor millions of other Christians in the UK. Why should we donate to the Church of England for you to waste it on woke virtue signalling? Oh, for goodness sake, everything is fucking woke. Every time someone does something good, it's woke. God, what a dickhead. What an absolute wanker. The article goes on. Richard Tice, nickname Mr. Offended. In full, this is what Sarah Mola. It's a difficult name to get my tongue right, isn't it? I'll start again. Richard Tice, nickname Mr. Offended. In full, this is what Sarah Mullally, the Archbishop of Canterbury, said in her post. Today I visited Cape Coast Castle. Seeing the horrific conditions that thousands of people were kept in, it is impossible not to feel the weight of the immense evil that drove the transatlantic slave trade. I pray not only in lament for the Church's involvement in the slave trade, but also for hope that the God of healing can bring justice and reconciliation to all who are still impacted by its legacy. In the name of Jesus Christ, who came to set people free, I pray that we have the courage to continue our journey of repentance and to strive for a world in which all of God's children are treated with dignity. And this is how Tice responded. Did you thank Jesus for giving great courage and vision to the British for abolishing the slave trade, spending vast amounts of money and sacrificing brave Royal Naval sailors in the process? As a Christian, you don't speak for me, nor millions of other Christians in the UK. Why should we donate to the Church of England for you to waste it on woke virtue signaling? If you're confused as to what Tice is so upset about, it's presumably the idea that anyone should feel repentant about the past. Guilt can be an unproductive emotion in that it encourages defensiveness, but Mullally clearly isn't urging her followers to be overwhelmed by the feeling. In her message, she acknowledges that the evils of the past and argues that there's hope to be taken from the journey society has taken, even though there is more yet to be done. To some, this is the essence of Jesus' teachings, in that it encompasses redemption, loving your neighbors, etc. For people like Tice, however, the essence of Christianity is moaning about literally everything and mistrusting everyone outside your immediate family. Yeah, exactly. There's so much hypocrisy in his reply. There's a couple of other things to note about Tice's response, starting with this. Did you thank Jesus for giving great courage and vision to the British for abolishing the slave trade, spending vast amounts of money? Speaking on how Britain abolished the slave trade, Madison Whedon wrote for the Canary, conveniently, Braverman makes no mention of what happened when the abhorrent slave trade and later slavery itself were abolished. It wasn't the enslaved who were compensated, it was the slave owners. They received such vast sums to cover their supposed financial losses that the British government borrowed heavily to fund the payouts. The debt from that borrowing was paid off by taxpayers for generations, with the final payments only being completed in 2015. Thus, ordinary people effectively spent almost 2 centuries paying to compensate slave owners, while enslaved people received nothing. Excuse me. Yeah, Richard Tice conveniently forgot about that side of things. If nothing else, we should be aware of our past to prevent it happening again. Whether you feel guilt about the past is up to you, but if we don't learn from our mistakes, we will have plenty to regret in the present. As noted, Tice recently promoted a post from Andrew Tate, who has been charged with 3 counts of arranging or facilitating trafficking for sexual exploitation, alongside several other charges for unforgivable offences. To align himself with someone like that suggests that Tice's objections to the Archbishop stem from a lax attitude towards human rights and not her framing of the matter. Reform's downfall. As we've reported elsewhere, we're not practically Reform's downfall. As we've reported elsewhere, we're not particularly optimistic. Andy Burnham will change this country's fortunes. At the same time, it's nice to see reform sliding down the opinion polls. Dave Lawrence tweeted this, yet another opinion poll this week that puts reform several points behind. And this is from Opinion, latest Opinion Observer UK poll. Labour surges into the lead for the first time in 15 months and records its largest lead over reform since January 2025. And you can see that Labour are leading in the polls there. Labour are at 27%, whereas Reform are at 23%. Partially, this is down to the burn and bounce. At the same time, it seems the more people see of Reform, the less they trust the party. And with posts like the above from Tice, it's not hard to see why. In my opinion, Richard Tice is just a whiny, nappy baby. He complains everything. Everything is woke and virtue signaling as far as he's concerned. But let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments. Okay, I'm just going to take a bit of a break to blow my nose, but I'll be back in a second. Hello. I'm back. Right. Let's move on. Still got a lot to get through. It's been a busy week for news. Yes, we've got another story about Richard Tice. He's in trouble. A lot of trouble. Let's get into this. This story is from The Guardian. Standards watchdog investigating reforms UK's. I'll start that again. Standards watchdog if I can get the words out. This story is from The Guardian. Standards watchdog investigating Reform UK's Richard Tice. Party's deputy leader says on social media the case is related to a complaint by an anti-Israel lobby group. This story is by Aletha Adu, political correspondent. Reform UK's deputy leader, Richard Tice, is under investigation by Parliament Standards Watchdog over a possible failure to declare an interest. I wonder if he'll resign and force a by-election in his constituency, just like Nigel Farage did. I wonder. That'd be really interesting if he did. That'd be hilarious. The watchdog. Dodd. Oh dear. Let's start that one again. The watchdog did not provide details of the allegation aside from saying the case was opened on the 28th of July and would be conducted by the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards, Daniel Greenberg. As a matter of procedure, the watchdog never publicly releases details of an allegation being investigated until it has published its conclusion. Tice, the MP for Boston and Skegness, swiftly claimed on X that the inquiry related to a complaint over whether I should have referenced my register of interests at the start of a debate on a UK democracy and Israeli influence. Well, yes, he should have. Without naming the group he was referring to, he wrote on X, contrary to garbage in media, Standards Commissioner is considering complaint by anti-Semitic, anti-Israel lobby group over whether I should have referenced my register of interests at start of a debate on UK democracy and Israeli influence. A Labour Party spokesperson said the Reform's Lee scandals continue to pile up. Richard Tice is now under investigation by the Standards Commissioner on top of his firm avoiding paying £600,000 in tax. This means that both Reform's leader and deputy leader now have standards investigations hanging over them. Yeah, it's just one thing after another with Reform, especially with Nigel Farage and Richard Tice. It just seems to be one scandal after another. They're both being investigated. With police probes, Nigel Farage's secret £5 million gift and reports of funding from a convicted fraudster, it's clear Reform think the rules just don't apply to them. Greenberg had also been investigating Farage, Reform UK's leader, over a £5 million gift he received in April 2024 from the Thailand-based crypto billionaire Christopher Harborne, first revealed by The Guardian. That investigation was paused after Farage resigned as an MP last month and triggered a by-election for his Clacton seat in which he will stand again. The contest, in which all the other major political parties have refused to participate, leaves Farage taken on 33 other candidates, including Count Binface and Howling Lord Hope of the official Monster Raving Loony Party. The Metropolitan Police are also investigating payments to Reform UK, assessing payments made to the party via a company controlled by Tice. The police investigation came after The Guardian revealed last month that Fiona Cottrell made a £1 million transfer to Britain Means Business shortly before donations were made. About half of the funds were passed to Reform UK. Cottrell's son George has close links to Farage. Last week, Parliament's standards watchdog declined to investigate a complaint made against Tice over an undeclared loan of £78,100 he received in December 2024, months after he was elected as the MP for Boston and Skegness. Oh, that shocked me. Power and battery. What? Why not plugged in? No, I wasn't plugged in. Jesus. Christ. Where was I? The article goes on. The article goes on. The Commissioner told the Liberal Democrat MP Lisa Smart that he would not take further action on the basis that her complaint had not provided sufficient evidence to justify an investigation into a potential breach of conduct. Tice had said the loan was a corporate one to one of his companies, which he said was not declarable. I have a number of corporate loans in my companies. None of them are declarable. They are to do with my property business activities, not to do with politics, Tice said, adding that his shareholdings and directorships were fully declared. In January last year, Tice gave £613,000 to Reform via Thyssen Investments in an unusual case of an MP donating to their own party. A month later, a sum of £655,000 was paid into Thyssen's account in what was described by Tice as an overpayment for a property purchase. All of this sounds really dodgy. Oh God, can't get the words out tonight. Start again. All of this sounds really dodgy in my opinion. It sounds dodgy as fuck. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Phew. Okay. Oh. That went down the wrong pipe. Anyway, let's soldier on. Oh, hang on, was there something in X that I wanted to see as well about this story? Oh no, I don't think it's relevant, in all fairness. Okay, moving on then. Okay, from Reform to the Labour Party, and specifically Andy Burnham, our new Prime Minister. This story is from The Canary by Rachel Swindon. Burnham's actions since becoming Prime Minister scream business as usual. Right then, let's not mess about. Andy Burnham has been Prime Minister for 2 weeks, and already the man who promised real change and a break with the past has filled his top team with so many Labour Friends of Israel veterans, pro-Israel donors, and establishment retreads, you'd be forgiven for thinking that Starmer never actually left. Burnham offers just more of the same. We were told it would be different. Burnham said he had heard the anger. He knew people were sick of being ignored and sick of lobbyists calling the shots, sick of foreign governments dictating our foreign policy while our own people go hungry. And then he turns around and hires the exact same people who've been doing exactly that for the last decade. Let's run the numbers because they all tell a story even the BBC can't spin. Almost 40% of Burnham's cabinet are affiliated with LFI, the lobby group that works hand in glove with the Israeli embassy. It doesn't expose its funders, and LFI's former director went on to become a spokesperson for the Israeli government. Not some of them, just a few bad apples, 2 in every 5. And that's just the ones we can name. The real figure is almost certainly higher. And it's not his cabinet. It's the people who's put in the most powerful jobs around him, the ones who actually write the policy, the ones who decide who gets listened to and who gets shown the door. Take James Purnell, Burnham's new Chief of Staff, the most important job in Downing Street outside of the Prime Minister himself. And who is Purnell? The former chair of LFI. Purnell ran the lobby group between 2002 and 2004, a Blairite through and through. And it should go without saying Purnell voted for the Iraq War. Now he's running Burnham's operation. Yeah, and I've talked about this at length on a previous stream. And I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, that under Burnham, it's just more of the same, and it's just business as usual. That Andy Burnham is just Keir Starmer with a northern accent. The list goes on and on. Then, hang on. The list goes on and on. Then there's Bridget Phillipson. Burnham's first big appointment as Labour Party chair was announced in the last few days. She's been in the role for barely a week, and it's already been reported that she's received 2 £40,000 donations from Stuart Roden, a financier whose Tel Aviv-based venture capital firm employs an array of former Israeli soldiers, many of whom have served in elite intelligence units. Wow, that's dodgy as fuck. Roden holds private meetings with the Israeli ambassador. And it's not just Phillipson. Lisa Nandy, another top Burnham appointee, also took £40,000 from him. And we're supposed to believe that doesn't matter. But it somehow gets worse, because it's not just money, it's the policy. Burnham spent months hinting that he'd be different on Gaza and has apologised for Starmer's slow response. But then, of course, reappointed Ian Austin as UK trade envoy to Israel. Yes, that Ian Austin. The man who quit Labour over Corbyn was ennobled by Boris Johnson, has falsely smeared pro-Palestine campaigners as anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers. He was forced to apologise in court. This is the man who has openly defended Israel's actions in Gaza even after the UN said it found a plausible risk of genocide, and Burnham put him back in the job as if nothing happened. Poor judgment and poor leadership. Yeah, she's right. She's absolutely right. This is poor judgment and poor leadership on behalf of Andy Burnham. It just goes on and on. I keep seeing red flags, popping up all around Andy Burnham and all around his cabinet. It just gets worse and worse as far as I'm concerned. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well at all. She's right. It's just going to be business as usual under Andy Burnham. Of course, Burnham won't say the G word. Let that sink in. While millions of people in this country are horrified by what's happening in Gaza, marching, protesting, donating, begging for our government to stop spending arms and start speaking up, Burnham's response is to promote the lobbyists, reinstall the smear merchants, and pack the cabinet with LFI veterans. It is insulting and frustrating in equal measures. Burnham had a clean slate. He could have done anything. He could have reached for people who've actually stood up for Palestine and who've actually fought for public services, those who answer to us and not foreign lobbyists. Instead, Burnham gazed at the list of Starmer's most loyal pro-Israel ministers, crossed out the ones the papers didn't like, and put the rest in charge. Wes Streeting, LFI, Ed Miliband, LFI, John Healey, LFI, Yvette Cooper, LFI. The list goes on. These aren't accidental appointments. These are not the best people for the job. This is the establishment's safety net. They let Burnham have the job because they, and we knew they were guaranteed, that when it came to things that actually mattered to power, he'd pick the same team. Yeah, it stinks. I'm not claiming any of these people are inherently evil. It's that there's no fresh start here. There's no break with the past. There's no Burnham revolution. There's a man who rode public anger into power on the back of a promise to change things. Then the very first thing he did was hand the keys to the same people who've been driving us over a cliff for 20 years. Did you really expect change? If your top team is stuffed full of people with deep, documented financial and political ties to a foreign government, and that government is still slaughtering innocent civilians by the thousands, you cannot claim to be putting Britain first. You cannot claim to be different. We can see the appointments, can see the donors and the lobby groups. Actions speak louder than northern accents, and so far every single action of Andy Burnham's since walking into Downing Street screams of one thing loud and clear: business as usual. Burnham hasn't sailed into a new era. He's just taken the wheel of the same ship, and the passengers he's supposed to be carrying aren't you and me. They're the ones paying for the voyage, and we all know who they are. And she's absolutely right. It is just business as usual under Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham is nothing more than Keir Starmer with a northern accent, as I've been saying for weeks now. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay. I think we've got another story about Andy Burnham as well. Let's have a look. Yeah. Yeah, this isn't good. More bad news about Burnham. But let's have a look. This story is from The Canary by Jodie McIntyre. Burnham reappoints former Israeli Supreme Court clerk as Justice Minister. Back in March, the Labour government's bill to restrict access to jury trials, a right enjoyed by English citizens for over 800 years, successfully passed its first reading. But last week, only hours after former Justice Minister David Lammy was dropped from Andy Burnham's new cabinet, a Downing Street spokesperson announced that the newly coronated Prime Minister had no intention of following through with the plan. Eyebrows were raised, however, at the ministerial reappointment of Sarah Sackman, Keir Starmer's ex-Solicitor General and a key supporter of Lammy's jury proposals. Sackman has previously worked as a foreign law clerk at the Israeli Supreme Court, and her grandfather once served as an ambassador for the settler state. Last week, Burnham extended her role in government with a reappointment at the Ministry of Justice. Sackman's funders. At the end of June, and just 11 days after Burnham's by-election victory at Makerfield, Sackman registered 2 new donations, each of £1,250. Hang on. I can't read. Oh dear. It's a hot night, okay? It's too hot today. I'll start this section again. Sackman's funders. At the end of June, and just 11 days after Burnham's by-election victory in Makerfield, Sackman registered 2 new donations, each of £1,250 from veteran pro-Israeli bankroller Trevor King. Sackman has long been a favourite of wealthy lobbyists, receiving tens of thousands of pounds from ex-Labour Friends of Israel chair Jonathan Mendelsohn, former Israeli soldier Jonathan Kestenbaum, and the Grabner family. Anthony Grabner, who is not amongst Sackman's donors, was one of the UK lawyers for Israel patrons recently subjected to illegal intimidation complaints. What do Sackman and Burnham really care about? On Wednesday, at an event organised by Jewish Care, a charity whose life president is former Tony Blair bankroller Michael Levy, Sackman announced it was wonderful to welcome the Prime Minister back to Jewish Care in Golders Green this morning. As Andy said, this time we are going to get this right. However, a professed passion for reforming the care system is not the only thing the pair have in common. One of the funders of Burnham's 2015 Labour leadership campaign was Michael Sternberg, who has also financed the current courts minister. From 2015 to 2024, Sackman was vice chair of the Jewish Labour movement, which states that one of its aims is to promote the centrality of Israel in Jewish life. In 2015, Sackman said, "The issue of Israel is something that is deeply personal and emotional." Sackman's opposition to the ICC. In May 2024, Sackman opposed the International Criminal Court, ICC, arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, saying, "I trust the Israeli people to hold their leaders to account." A 2025 Penn University poll recorded that 82% of Jewish Israelis supported the forced expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza. 47% agreed that Israeli military should kill all inhabitants of the enemy cities. This is the nation Sackman trusts to hold war criminals Netanyahu and Gallant to account. Before entering politics, Sackman worked at Matrix Chambers with former Attorney General Richard Herner, who once declared that he has dear family members serving in the Israeli military. Last week, Burnham replaced Herner with Ellie Reeves, a long-time supporter of the Labour Friends of Israel lobby group. Burnham continues Starmer's legacy. Starmer will always be remembered for the military and diplomatic support he consistently lent to the Israeli state. But in December 2024, just over 1 year into the Gaza genocide, Sackman insisted that Starmer's administration had broadly got it right on the issue of Palestine. She made the comments in a public conversation with Adrian Cohen, LFI's lay chair. Last Thursday, the controversial lobby group published a new paper suggesting that a ban on trade with illegal Israeli settlements is practically and politically impossible. LFI-affiliated MPs continue to dominate the Labour cabinet. On the issue of Palestine, Sackman's reappointment sends a loud signal to those who thought Burnham might change course. So, yeah. So there you have it. More evidence, if any were needed, that under Burnham, it's just going to be business as usual. It's just going to be business as usual when it comes to Labour's stance on Israel. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, more Labour woes. This is a big. This is quite this is quite a story. This one. We've still got a few more stories to get through, but we're getting there. This story is from Novara Media. Labour forces through London data centre amid worst drought in decades. The facility will help city bankers make faster trades, by Joshua Cowell. Andy Burnham's government has approved a new data centre near London's Brick Lane, despite widespread local opposition, even as the city suffers its worst drought in decades. Housing Secretary Angela Rayner last week overturned a July 2025 decision by Tower Hamlets Council to scrap the project at the Truman Brewery, which was proposed by Truman Estates and Ziloof LLP. The 5,200 square metre data centre on Grey Eagle Street will use up to 5.2 megawatts, the same amount of power as 15,000 homes, according to the Save Brick Lane campaign group. Its proximity to the city will allow high-frequency traders to shave milliseconds of their transaction times. Projections for the project's water consumption have not been released, but data centers typically use huge quantities to cool their servers. Even with cooling, the heat they emit can increase local temperatures, while the demands they place on the grid often increase infrastructure costs, leading to higher household bills. Labour Minister Matthew Pennycook said in a published decision that the development will go ahead after an assessment of potential impacts on groundwater levels. Thousands of people have signed a petition urging the government to scrap the project. After the Aspire-led council rejected the project, then Housing Secretary Steve Reed took the decision out of the council's hands in October 2025 so that the government would have final say. Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, Steve Reed as a what? What was that sound? That was weird. Start that section again. Thousands of people have signed a petition urging the government to scrap the project. After the Aspire-led council rejected the project, then Housing Secretary Steve Reed took the decision out of the council's hands in October 2025 so that the government would have final say. Yeah, of course he did. He's such a wanker. I really don't like Steve Reed. I really don't like him at all. And this is anti-democratic as well. Unbelievable stuff. The developers also plan to build offices, a cinema, a supermarket and 44 homes, including 6 for social rents. Save Brick Lane said the development offers almost nothing to local stakeholders and the community, and only a tiny amount of social and affordable housing. It added, this development will threaten the livelihood of existing independent shops and businesses in Brick Lane. Around 100 new data centres are currently planned across the UK, according to researchers Barber ABI. 100 new data centres, for goodness sake. For goodness sake. Beggars belief. Critics warn that data centres are accelerating global warming and climate collapse. Yeah, they're right. London, along with around half of England, is experiencing its worst drought in decades. July was the first month since records began where no rainfall was recorded at a weather station in Kew Gardens. This is really irresponsible from the Labour Party. I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe they've greenlit this data centre and potentially about 100 others as well, when we're experiencing the worst drought since records began, when the world is on fire, when climate change is just getting worse and worse. They're doing this. They greenlit this data center and maybe 100 others. It's really irresponsible. It just goes to show that they don't care about the environment at all. I think it's a good idea to learn a bit more about data centers and the impact they have on the environment. Let's have a look. This is from Feminist. Facts about data centers that will radicalize you. Do you really need to ask AI? A single ChatGPT query uses nearly 10 times more electricity than a standard Google search. One modern AI data center can use as much power as 100,000 homes. If data centers were a country, they would be the world's 11th largest electricity consumer. Data centers are greedy and thirsty. Last year, data centers consumed 4.5 trillion litres of water, enough to support over 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa. Data centers are noisy. They can create noise pollution up to 100 decibels, the equivalent of a motorcycle or a jackhammer, causing headaches, sleep disruption, lower quality of life, and harm to local wildlife. Data centers take land away from farms and wildlife. In 2024, the average data center was roughly the size of 450 football fields. Data centers are disproportionately sited near Black and low-income communities and are linked to high levels of air pollution and water pollution. Data center equipment doesn't last forever. Scientists estimate that by 2030, AI servers could generate 131.0 to 224.8 kilotons of e-waste per year, the equivalent of Denmark, Norway, or Austria's 2022 e-waste. Much of the data stored in data centers is dark data, data that is collected and stored but not actively used, like the old photos in your camera roll. Dark data is projected to waste up to 6.4 million tons of carbon dioxide a year. Despite their massive and permanent social and environmental costs, the average lifespan of a data center is only 10 to 20 years. Support the organizations fighting the unregulated development of AI and data centers. And they've listed the organizations there. It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the impact that AI and data centers have on the environment. But it doesn't stop there.
Data centers are killing their bees. I don't think people understand just how important this is. Without bees, we die too. Data centers produce artificial EMF fields that researchers say disrupt the magnetic navigation systems bees have relied on for millions of years. One farmer claims he hasn't seen a single bee since a data center was built nearby. These EMFs are causing documented reductions in colony size, decreased breeding efficiency, and distress signals consistent with bees sensing constant imminent danger. This is happening while we already have a bee crisis. The U.S. lost nearly 60% of managed colonies from 2024 to 2025, the worst year on record. Now it's getting that much worse. A 2023 review examining EMF impacts on insects broadly documented decreased reproductive capacity, altered behavior, oxidative stress, DNA damage, and impaired development. This is how important bees are to the food supply. Roughly 1 in every 3 bites of food people eat globally relies on pollination by bees and other insects. 1.4 billion people depend on pollination for jobs and income, and these are especially smallholder farms. Our entire food supply literally depends on keeping the bees alive. If we want to help fight back against this, we need to be supporting our local beekeepers and saving the environment. You know it's getting bad now that farmers...
Yeah, exactly. Data centers are killing bees as well. It's terrible. Terrible stuff. So it just seems to me that Andy Burnham and the Labour Party don't care about the environment at all. But let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments. Okay, I think we've just got a few more stories and that's it. We're getting there, guys. Any comments? No. Okay. Zia Youssef. Oh. Oh. This story is from the Daily Britain. Zia Youssef in awkward BBC clash as Farage comeback timeline unravels by Jordan Scott. BBC Breakfast's John Kay pressed Reform's Zia Youssef on the weekend's revelation that Farage was in talks to return as Reform's leader in April 2024, at the time he was receiving the £5 million gift from crypto billionaire Christopher Harborne. Kay laid out the contradiction directly. Farage has always said he wasn't thinking about politics then, that he was an influencer and a media personality rather than a politician, that he was clearly active politically, wasn't he? Yusuf's first move was distance. This is before my time in the party. I wasn't privy to those discussions going on, obviously, while reading the papers. Then he pivoted to a broader defence. Nigel has been in politics for decades. During that period, he was an influencer. He was making videos, putting them online. Of course, he was talking about political issues like the small boats crisis and things like immigration. Kay didn't let that go. So didn't that make him a politician? He wasn't considering becoming an MP, Yusuf said, and it was only very much at the last minute, actually. Yeah, right, that's been proven not to be the case. A very short period of time before he announced it, he decided to come back. Yeah, that's a lie. That's a fucking lie. We know that's a lie now. That's bollocks. Mike H. tweeted this. John Kay, it emerged over the weekend that he, Farage, was in talks and thinking about returning to as leader of Reform in April 2024 when he was receiving that £5 million gift from a crypto billionaire, Zia Yusuf. It was before my time. Waffle, immigrants. Okay, let's watch the clip.
It emerged over the weekend that he was in talks and thinking about returning to leadership of Reform UK in April 2024 when he was receiving that £5 million personal gift from a crypto billionaire. He previously said he wasn't thinking about politics at the time, that he was an influencer and a media personality then, not a politician. But he was clearly active politically, wasn't he?
Well, look, this is before my time in the party. I wasn't privy to those discussions. Like going on, obviously, while reading the papers. But I think the important point to make here,
from what you've read,
is obviously Nigel has been in politics for decades. During that period, you know, he was an influencer. He was making videos, putting them online. Of course, he was talking about political issues like.
And I've said this before. I think that the interviewer should have persevered in interrupting Zia Yusuf there. He shouldn't have allowed him to waffle on and on. He shouldn't have allowed him to filibust like that. He should have persevered and pushed the points, you know, further, and not allowed him to go on and on, you know, like he did allow him to.
The small boats crisis and things like immigration.
So didn't that make
but he
him a
wasn't an
politician?
MP. He wasn't considering becoming an MP, and it was only very much at the last minute, actually, a very short period of time before he announced it, that he decided to come back. So I think that story, A, has been litigated. I mean, Reform have answered these questions hundreds of times, but also I think it is considerably less important, as I said, than the invasion of our country and what we're going to do about it.
Yeah, that's bullshit. That's bollocks. We know that's not true now. That last-minute claim is directly contradicted by the Sunday Times investigation that broke over the weekend. It found Farage struck a leadership agreement with Richard Tice in March and April 2024, supervised by George Cottrell months before the point Yusuf just described. The agreement laid out how Reform would repay or write off more than £1 million in loans owed to Tice once Farage took over, and was presented to the party's own treasurer, Mirtrash Azami, in mid-May, weeks before the election was even called. Azami's own account contradicts Yusuf too. I was told about the agreement before the election was called. It was commenced when Nigel came back. Yusuf didn't engage with any of that timeline on air. He moved straight to closing the subject down. I think that story has been litigated. Reform have answered these questions hundreds of times. No, they haven't. Fuck off. But also, I think it's considerably less important, as I said, than the invasion of our country. Invasion! Fuck it. Hell. They always use this word invasion, like it's, D-Day or whatever. Like we're in the middle of a war, for goodness sake. Invasion. People are desperately fleeing for their lives, trying to escape persecution, trying to escape war, trying to escape to this country for a better life for themselves. They're not invading, for goodness sake. But this language of invasion, it dehumanizes these people. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. It makes them out to be the enemy. Zia Yusuf knows exactly what he's doing in using that word. It's classic dog whistling. Two things worth noting. First, litigated hundreds of times, doesn't actually address whether the new reporting is accurate. It just asserts the subject is closed. Second, the pivot away from a direct question is a pattern, not a one-off. This is exactly what Jenrick did days earlier. Robert Jenrick did something close to identical this week. Asked 3 separate times about George Cottrell transferring more than £2 million dollars to his mother in the days before her donations to Reform. Each time he gave the same non-answer, entirely confident the rules were followed, no contact from the police, nothing further to add, before pivoting to attack the parliamentary standards process itself as a kangaroo court. That $2 million transfer is his own story. Reporting has established that Cottrell moved money to his mother Fiona 24 to 72 hours before each of her donations to Reform, a pattern specific enough that it's now central to the Metropolitan Police's investigation into whether Reform's donations disguised their true source. Separately, George Cottrell has been revealed as the source of undeclared support to Farage himself. Staff, security, and social media production, none of it declared when Farage entered Parliament. Underneath all of it sits the original story. Farage's undeclared £5 million gift from Harborne, received before he became an MP. Farage has offered several different explanations over time. First, that it was for his security, then a reward for decades of Brexit campaigning, then simply his money to spend however he liked. A parliamentary standards investigation into whether it should have been declared was opened, then paused when Farage resigned as Clacton's MP to trigger his own by-election and resumes if he's re-elected on the 13th of August. Why it matters less keeps being the answer. Kay's actual question never got answered. Was Farage clearly active politically while telling the public he wasn't? Yusuf didn't say no. He said it matters less than something else entirely. The exact same move Jenrick made over Cottrell's transfers, the exact same move Farage himself has made repeatedly when asked about his finances, calling scrutiny of them irrelevant and part of an establishment campaign against Reform. It's a strategy that only works if journalists stop asking the follow-up question. On BBC Breakfast, at least Kay didn't. Yeah. All of this is dodgy as fuck, but we know this already. And Zia Youssef, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, Robert Jenrick et al. Can deflect as much as they want, but the truth will come out eventually. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay. Whew. What's next? There's 3 more stories. Or is it? I mean, we'll see. Yes. Okay, next segment. Yeah, 3 more stories. This story is from The Independent. Count Binface could get 20% of vote in Clacton by-election, new poll shows. Some 20% of Clacton voters to back Count Binface in Nigel Farage's constituency. A fifth of voters could back Count Binface over Nigel Farage in the upcoming by-election in the Reform UK leader's constituency, new polling has suggested. A new survey by Survation for Mandate Research suggests that Mr Farage would win 73% of the vote on a low turnout when constituents head to the polls later this month. But his main rival, Count Binface, could sweep up an estimated 20% of the vote. When options are reduced to just 2 candidates, Mr Farage's vote drops to 69%, while support for Count Binface surges to 31%. Can you imagine if that actually happened? Can you imagine how humiliating it would be for Nigel Farage if Count Binface was voted for by 1 in 5 voters in Clacton? That would be humiliating for him. The poll, seen by The Telegraph, also suggests that Mr Farage would gain 56% support in the next general election, with the Conservatives on 10% and Labour on 8%. Mr Farage's decision to force a contest followed continued questions about a £5 million donation he received from crypto billionaire Christopher Harborne and gifts from a convicted criminal, George Cockrell. He is currently the subject of an investigation by Parliamentary Standards Commissioner Daniel Greenberg over whether his failure to declare the money, which he claims was a gift, on becoming an MP in 2024, breached Commons rules. Count Binface, a satirical character who has pledged to abolish VAR in football, conscript people who play loud music on public transport, and nationalise Adele, has now emerged as his main competitor. It would be absolutely hilarious if he actually wins. if Count Binface actually pulls it off and wins. It will be hilarious. It would finish Farage. It would be the end of Farage's political career. And it could be the end of reform as well, because let's face it, Farage is reform, and reform is Farage. Without Farage, there's no reform. Let's be honest. So, Clacton, if you want to get rid of Nigel Farage once and for all, vote Count Binface. It would be hilarious. It'd be utterly hilarious. I would love it if Count Binface won. And I think by the time this segment actually goes out, we'll know whether or not he has won. So watch this space. The comedian, who is described as an independent space warrior and wears a bin on his head, has contested a number of elections, including contests against Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, and most recently, the by-election in Makerfield, where he received 95 votes. Bookmakers have slashed the odds of the regular joke candidate at by-elections to beat Mr. Farage after all major parties refused to stand in what they have dubbed a fake election. Count Binface is now being quoted as the second favourite at 9-1 by William Hill. The Tories, Lib Dems, Greens and Labour have all announced that they will not stand in the by-election, describing it as a desperate political stunt. Last week, Mr. Farage's approval rating hit its lowest level since the 2024 general election, and the latest evidence that Reform UK is on the verge of seeing its support collapse. Yeah. I'm hoping that whether or not Farage wins this by-election, I'm hoping that Reform will implode before the next general election. And it's looking more and more likely that that will happen. But let's see, let's wait and see. I think it would be absolutely hilarious if Count Binface wins the Clacton by-election. And even if he doesn't win, him getting a fifth of the vote will still be humiliating for Farage. It'll be a humiliation for Farage either way. But let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments. Okay then. Got two more stories and then that's it. Excuse me. This story is from Pink News. Restore Britain councillor mocked for being triggered by rainbow picnic table by Tom Hutt Dixon. Restore Britain County Councillor Owain Clatworthy took offence to a rainbow picnic table. A Restore Britain councillor has been accused of homophobia after complaining that a rainbow-painted picnic table represented mandatory ideology that was impossible to escape. What a dickhead. Fancy getting triggered by a rainbow-coloured picnic table, for goodness sake. I thought, these people are the ones who say that people on the left are the snowflakes. They're not supposed to be the snowflakes. For goodness sake. You couldn't make it up. Owain Clatworthy, a councillor for Pyle Kenneth Hill and Kevin Cribber in Bridgend, shared an image on Facebook on Tuesday, the 28th of July, of a rainbow bench outside of Marks and Spencer at the MacArthur Glen outlet at Bridgend, South Wales. You can't even sit down for coffee at MacArthur Glen for 5 minutes without being reminded of the latest mandatory ideology, he wrote. This isn't about kindness or inclusion. It's about making one political view impossible to escape in every public space. The post backfired, drawing tens of thousands of comments, many mocking him for being triggered by a picnic table. A table won't make you gay. He was widely accused of homophobia, with commentators start that again. A table won't make you gay. He was widely accused of homophobia, with commenters pointing out that the people's sexualities and gender identities are not a political view. One branded him a bigot. Someone else said, "It's a brightly coloured table that makes people smile, a brightly coloured inanimate object that brightens up an area in a shopping centre. Just remember that." Another said, "A table won't make you gay," adding laughing emojis and, "It's a colourful table. I will be sat there with my niece and she would like the colours." The table in question featured a rainbow of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and pink, which are not commonly the colours of pride flags, which are red, orange, yellow, green, and violet. Yeah, that just shows his ignorance. He doesn't even know, what the colours of the pride flag are. He sees a rainbow and he thinks it's about pride. When it's just a rainbow, for goodness sake. It's just a colourfully painted table. It's probably got nothing to do with pride or homosexuality. That's just a mistake on his part. He's just reading too much into it. He's just reading something into it that isn't there. Clatworthy made history last year as Bridgend's youngest ever county councillor at 20, winning under Reform UK before defecting to Restore Britain. Of course he defected to Restore Britain. Of course he did. Of course Reform UK weren't right-wing enough for him. What dickhead. That makes a lot of sense. That explains a lot. He has courted controversy before, having been accused of openly racist comments after writing that Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Share your thoughts. Let us know in the comments below, and remember to keep the conversation respectful. And yeah, it looks like that's the end of the article. Okay. So I say the same thing. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to keep the conversation respectful. Okay, one final story. This is hilarious. This story is from The Independent. Rupert Lowe refuses to say whether King Charles is a white Briton in car crash interview. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do something a bit different. I think I decided I wasn't going to share that article. I was going to do something I was going to do it a bit differently. I think hang on. Right. Hang on. Yeah, so okay, where is this? Ah, yes. Okay, let's start again. Let's start this section again. Politics Joe posted this. Watch Rupert Lowe accused the BBC of peddling a malign agenda of climate change and DEI on Radio 4 this morning.
Clear, and I think most British people, if you speak to them, would agree. And that is
quote that white Britons will be a minority in 2063. By the definitions used in that particular report, King Charles is not a white Briton. Do you think he is a white Briton?
Well, many people have different interpretations of that, Nick. I mean, we can split hairs, but I think...
Well, you're not splitting hairs. Do you think the monarch of this country is a white Briton?
Quite clear, and I think most British people, if you speak to them, would agree. And that is why
King Charles a white
Britain's
Briton?
membership is growing very fast, and your listeners are dropping equally fast because you don't reflect actually what's happening.
Why don't you answer the question now we've come
through? You try and whitewash all of the things that are happening.
Is King Charles a white Briton?
Climate change, you peddle DEI, you peddle all of the malign agenda, which British people got bored of.
Right.
So
they're bored of people ignoring the questions, Mr. Lowe. You quote that white Briton.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. I can't believe he was unable to answer the simple question, is King Charles a white Briton? Unbelievable. Let's look at some of the comments. Auntie Tifa, great name. Why the F are we encouraging this scum? To which Numapam replied, quite, none of them should be given any airtime to spout such utter rubbish. Billionaires are the problem, said Rupert Lowe will be 69 this October and 72 come the next general election. From the age of 5 was privately educated until reaching university. worked in the city establishment as a banker for numerous banking institutions, a city elitist and multi-millionaire, owning a farm in Gloucestershire, was a member of the Conservative Party, then the Referendum Party, was an EU MP, member of Reform until thrown out, now Restore, chairman of Southampton Football Club, who at one point made Harry Redknapp manager, speaks volumes. Another malignant narcissist that shares his obvious hateful racism, a rabid racist and misogynistic whom through his delusional narcissism believe he speaks for the actual majority in the country. He actually speaks for less than 15%. Believes that the BBC are woke and are actually whitewashing the problems in his great country, as usual, talking complete bollocks. Another one suffering from delusions of grandeur. Yeah, good points. He should be totally ostracized, not given a platform, says Gareth Whitting 03. Rich Barnes says, just pull the plug on Lowe, Farage and all. You're not answering my question, so goodbye. The lefty scribe said, Lowe doing the Trump-style press attacks. Stop giving this rancid ballsack airtime. Parker Spix, 2018, said that vile cunt couldn't run a football club, let alone a country, to which Haggis Cookies, 67, replied, he couldn't run a flipping bath. Kashk said, why interview this thick racist shithead? It's pretty predictable he's going to spout MAGA talking points, because that's all these idiots have. Panda Honeywell replied to that, saying, exactly, shame on them. Remington Steele said, DEI is American bollocks, so we can see where this crap is coming from. Minnie Fox 1789 simply said, pub bore. yeah, exactly. Happy Joe Lucky 79 said, he can't answer a question. Sorry, I spelt won't wrong. Bullshit merchant and shit stir extraordinaire. yeah, exactly. Stevie B 77 said, isn't it true, Mr. Lowe, that the only reason you are pushing this morality is because the anger it generates at the attention economy is encouraging ever more froth-mouthed far-right bollocks, and no income for those who generate it, thanks to Musk's ownership of X? Yeah, good question. Blake Viv said, Lowe is a pompous cretin. I haven't heard that word for a while. CJ76530 said, Rupert, lowest of the low. New Ghost Band said, why does he get blanket coverage? Rupert Lowe is a scumbag, says Johnny Nick 6, and I cannot understand why he's being given a platform to spew absolute bullshit. He's a racist piece of garbage. The BBC needs to stop entertaining these ignorant, stupid idiots. Jonathan Schofield _art said, he's a dangerous piece of shit. Lord Vader UK simply said, racist old fuck. Oh, God. Panda Honeywell said, nobody agrees with this slubberdoogling, but the stupid racist fucks just like him. Shout over the interviewer. It doesn't answer the question, does it, Rupee? You Class Z muffin farts. G Stewart T D. I'll start that again. G Stewart DK said, "Yep, far better to pay a fortune for fossil fuels, up to 40% in a year, and be at the mercy of Trump, Putin, Saudi, and the Iranians, or whichever egotistical maniac next decides to cause a war over oil. Is he insane, or does the fossil fuel lobby pay for his party?" Robster 65 fella, blah, 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 never answer a question, just don the tinfoil hat and attack the interviewer. And David Smith, 1001, said, "You just shouldn't give him the exposure. Nobody wants to listen to a white racist on national radio." It just beggars belief that Rupert Lowe couldn't answer a simple question. He couldn't answer the simple question, is King Charles of White Britain? It just beggars belief. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay. Whew, we made it. And if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. And just a reminder that this is going to be my last stream for 4 weeks. I'm taking a sabbatical, but there'll be plenty of content for you to watch. There's still going to be plenty of segments scheduled each day. So do subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss out. Okay, bye for now.